Welcome to the Misophonia Podcast. This is episode 4. My name is Adil Ahmad, and I have misophonia. This week I'm talking to Tim, who's currently at Mississippi State. He's got a bit of a unique story. Comes from a large family. Some others have miso in it. He was homeschooled all his life. And we also talk about his transition now to college life. This is another great example of someone who's thought very deeply about his condition. And for the first time, he's just kind of given a chance to just talk. Even after editing everything, we're left with about 40 minutes of just a great conversation. A couple quick announcements. The Misophonia Podcast shop is now live. If you go to shop.misophoniapodcast.com, you'll find t-shirts, mugs, backpacks, socks, tote bags, aprons, all emblazoned with the podcast logo. And all proceeds go to 3 things: keeping the show going, reaching new audiences of people who have misophonia, and also towards research for misophonia. If you get something, don't forget to tag us on Instagram or Twitter. I'll have more links in the show notes. By the way, if you're liking the podcast, please do leave a review, especially on Apple Podcasts. It just helps more people see the podcast in their feed. All right, enough of all that. Let's get started with my conversation with Tim. So, welcome, Tim. Glad to have you here.
I'm glad to be here.
So a little bit about you. Whereabouts are you?
So I'm originally from Memphis. I grew up in Memphis my entire life, about probably an hour east on the Tennessee side. Currently, I'm a sophomore in college at Mississippi State University. I'm an industrial engineering student.
So you're a sophomore there. Is it a problem being at school? I've talked to a number of students, and there's kind of an epidemic of people bringing food into class and whatnot. So I'm curious.
Oh,
You're feeling it?
Yeah, especially my freshman year. It was really hard to get adjusted to that because I've been homeschooled my entire life, and so like my family, after like we worked all that stuff out, like they were pretty accommodating, because like they're my family. And so going here and like being surrounded by hundreds of people that I don't know, that don't know me, and they're eating and clicking pencils and all that, it was really hard to get used to.
So was this your first time? So you were homeschooled. Was this your first time in an educational environment then, outside of the home, I guess, right?
Well, pretty much.
Summer
I had a
schooling.
couple dual enrollment classes in high school, but this was like the first full-time student thing that I was doing. Yeah.
You got there. Was it right from the get-go, I guess? Were you kind of scared that I just signed up for like an expensive college education and I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it through the first week or?
Yeah, I was kind of nervous. I do have a couple like techniques for coping that really help me. I have these earbuds that I use.
Mm-hmm.
Like play white noise in them, and so like the first semester especially, I would turn up the white noise so that I could just barely hear the professor.
Yeah.
And I would like do like lip reading and like barely hear the professor and take notes, and then I couldn't really hear anything else around me, and so that really helped. It like made it hard to concentrate if I was tired, but it really did help. So like coming in, I wasn't like completely paralyzed. I had some sort of like functionality.
Yeah, earbuds are kind of miraculous that way. And were you ever like skipping? Did you get to the point where you were like, I gotta skip class, or was this kind of like, all right, I can deal with this and make it to all my classes?
There were a few times where I almost skipped class. I like to have perfect attendance or whatever, but like there were a few times I remember. There was one time last semester actually, I was in the class and I showed up like half a minute before it started, so I couldn't get my usual seat. And so I had to be in the back of the class, which is like, for me, that's the worst spot because you can hear everybody and see everybody. And so like there were people, it was cold, so there were people sniffing. There were a couple people eating, tapping pencils. And I almost had to get up and leave in that class because like I couldn't even think. I was just like sitting there, just like trying to control myself. It was pretty bad.
Yeah,
but that's the worst one I've had.
Yeah, it's obviously pros and cons. Back of the class, you can see everything. Front of the class, all the sound is bearing down on your shoulders. So
yeah, and I'd rather wear the earbuds and deal with the small amount of noise than like see it, because you can't avoid seeing things. Like
right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And and then studying. How did studying together with other people work, or did you just kind of like study on
I
your own?
don't. I
Yeah. Okay.
don't. I actually have a single room. So when I need to study, I go back in my room. I have some pretty nice speakers, so I just turn the volume as
Hmm.
loud as I can. Like I can't hear anything else. That's the only place I can actually like really study.
Yeah. I guess these days you
Everybody talks
can.
about like
Sorry, go
studying in
ahead.
like groups or whatever, and like I just can't. You know?
These days there's all kinds of you can probably ask questions online and other various formats, chatting or email or
Yeah.
whatever. So that probably
Yeah.
helps. Back in the day, you can do that. You go to the library, everyone brings some snacks, and just
Library is horrible. The library is so quiet, but like
yeah,
it's normal person quiet. And so for us, that means you have all the trigger noises that are just like deafening. I don't go in the library. I just don't. It's
oh yeah, yeah. You can hear everything.
awful.
The HVAC, people
Yes.
walking, and then
Mhm.
yeah. So so you're a sophomore now. So you feel like you'll make it through. You'll get your degree. You're coping this way.
Oh yeah.
Is there any other ways you're coping? I don't know.
Let's see. So like with the visual stuff, like people, I don't know if this bothers you, but like, people like shaking their legs,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
like rhythmically, that really gets me. And so like, if
Unfortunately,
that's
I'm actually probably
happening,
one of those people who shakes their leg.
well, I do it too,
Yeah.
but like, when
Yeah.
other people do it, you know how it is.
Yeah.
But
Well,
like,
speaking of that, actually, I don't mean to cut you off, but mimicking sounds and in this case, mimicking visual triggers kind of helps a lot of
mhm.
people.
Yeah, like I think for me the visual triggers, like that works. Like if someone else is shaking their leg, if I start shaking mine, like that'll make it a little better.
Mm.
But for the audio triggers, like I've heard about that and I've tried it a few times. It for some reason it just doesn't work for me. It
Yeah,
almost makes it worse.
I think it might be like you. But yeah, whatever works for people.
Yeah.
And so got it. So you're okay. So yeah, you'll make it through. You found your. Oh, so you were gonna talk about other coping mechanisms that you have.
Yeah, you're good. So like, with visual triggers, like I'll put my hand on my face to block my peripheral vision,
Hmm.
or like, I'll sit in the front of the class. Um, with the audio triggers, like earbuds are really the only thing I got right now. I'll if I'm in a situation where like I know I'm going to be in a situation where there's going to be triggers, I'll kind of mentally prep myself and I'll be like, okay, I can last for this long in this situation, and for that amount of time I'll be okay. And then like, as soon as my energy goes, I'll have to go because I won't be able to take it anymore.
Yeah.
But I've got to the point where like I can kind of like, set a time frame and be like, okay, I'm going to handle it for this long, and then like looking forward to the end of that time frame, I guess it just kind of helps me make it there. So that's another way, like mentally, I kind of prepare for that sort of thing.
Yeah, I've heard people do that around like meal times with their family and stuff, just kind of time
Yes.
boxing your brain and just
Yeah.
preparing it.
Yeah.
Um, and then yeah, so going back to your family, that sounds interesting. So you were homeschooled, so you were at home a lot
Yes.
with family, and a lot of people I talk to, their first triggers are their family. So I'm curious.
Yeah.
Let me so you go to let's go maybe back early to like if you remember kind of around when your first triggers were roughly around your age.
Yeah. Okay. So man, it was a while ago. I think I was like 14, probably.
Hmm.
I'm 19 now. So,
That's actually not super. I mean, I've talked to people who are like going back. They remember going back to age 8. So 14 is actually
whoa.
yeah,
Wow, that
yeah.
is crazy.
Hmm.
Man. Yeah, mine, I started, 13, 14. My first trigger, unfortunately, was my mom.
Hmm.
She, I don't know what it is about the way her mouth is,
Hmm.
but no matter how quietly she tries to eat, it's just like the loudest, juiciest thing in the world.
Yeah.
And also sometimes when she talks, she'll do that annoying thing where like you know, I'm not going to do it, but she smacks her lips as soon as she starts talking,
Yep.
like there's sucks in there. And I think that was what like really like started it for me. I would hear that and I would just like feel this weird like kind of disturbed feeling, like kind of like I wouldn't call it anxiety, but like distress of some sort, and like it was confusing. And I was
Right.
just like, okay, I'm just going through a phase. It's a little weird, and then it started getting worse. and like I'd start getting angry.
Mm-hmm.
And then like other members of my family, like my older siblings, like they didn't really eat quietly at all. They talk with their mouth full and all that stuff. And I have 9 siblings, and so when you're around the table and you have like 11 other people eating, and that sound just kind of like washes onto you, it's pretty overwhelming. And so it just escalated really quickly to the point where like I would eat my meal in 5 minutes and just bolt because I couldn't
Yep.
take it. And if I had to stay because we were like having a discussion, I would just like sit there stone faced, just trying to control myself. And if we were having a discussion, like certain people, the way they talked, it would just like, back then it felt like it was just like grating against me, and I just couldn't take it. And sometimes if we were like having family devotions or whatever, and like the person who was doing it was like smacking while they were talking, I would just like zone out completely,
Right.
you know. And it kept getting worse and worse, and eventually, like my family noticed, and they were like, "Tim, what's going on? Why are you angry? Why are you glaring at us? We're not doing anything." And so I tried to explain it to him. I was like, "I don't know, but like I'm angry when you guys make these noises. I don't like these noises," and they didn't really understand. And for a while, it was really strange with my family for a while because like they didn't understand why I was mad at them. I didn't understand why they couldn't see the problem.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, "Tim, just stop being annoyed by these noises." And I was like, "I can't. It's not
Mm-hmm.
something that I have the power over, the control over." And eventually, I was reading a Reader's Digest, and I glanced at the front cover and it was like, you know, something about misophonia and like, this guy being bothered by eating noises. And I was like, whoa, somebody else has that. And so I read it, and like it was this article about like the whole misophonia community and like all the
Mm-hmm.
tricks and everything. I was like, it was like one of the best moments of my
Yep.
life. The other people have this. I'm not crazy. Like this is a thing. I can deal with this now. I can tell my family, hey, this is a thing. Look, here's the proof.
So did you
And
take it to them and show it to them?
oh yes, oh immediately. I went online. I
Mm-hmm.
found all sorts of research, and then the ironic thing, which honestly frustrated me for a little bit. I think it's funny now. Apparently, my dad has the same thing, and we just never made the connection. So
Mm.
this entire time, my dad has had the same thing that I've had, and he just never like realized that like it was the same, and I never made the connection. And he's gotten a lot better. I think he kind of grew out of it slowly as he got older. So that was like, oh, my dad understands, my family understands now, and now we just like started working together. I started eating like at a separate table where I could still hear them talking, but I couldn't hear the eating as much. You know, um, when I was doing homeschooling, like I'd have my earbuds with the white noise. And then a few years later, my little brother actually started having the same thing, and so now we have 3 people in the family, and so like it's actually a really safe environment now for misophonia because like everybody's so used to it and accustomed to it. Like we'll just say, "Hey, that's bothering me. Please stop." And everybody will stop, and it'll be okay. And like people will ask if the noise bothers us and stuff like that. And like we're still working it out, but it's one of my favorite places now because of that. Like I can just be honest about it, and it's not a big deal, you know.
Wow, this is fascinating. There's a lot to unpack here because a lot of people, I mean, a lot of people, their families, who obviously love and want to be around, drive them crazy. So there's that conflict, which you experienced early on.
Yeah. Well, I still do some.
Yeah, right, right. But now it's like at least you have multiple people in the house who
Hmm.
understand what's going on, and it's kind of almost you have your like a little mini support group within your family,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
unheard. I have not heard of that. Which is great. So you did your research, and your family started to come around. So were you the first, other than your dad, were you the first to realize that this was a thing? It seemed like it because.
Yeah. 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 I figured it out, and actually, a couple days later, my mom had found something as well. But yeah, I was the first one to kind of have that realization.
And your dad, so you said your dad had it early on, and he kind of did he quote unquote get over it, or just kind of get used to it, or maybe he's got some hidden hearing aids that none of you are seeing, or
I don't think he's got like secret implants or
yeah,
anything, but I think the way he describes it is as he got older, like into his 30s or so, the sounds just started bothering him less.
Mm.
I assume it's a combination of loss of hearing and kind
Yeah,
of
I was going to ask if
desensitization.
how the rest of his hearing was.
It's slowly declining. He still has really good hearing, but like it's not as good as it used to be.
Hmm, hmm.
And and also I think he's gotten so used to it that like even if it still does bother him, he won't recognize it because his body and his emotions just kind of like automatically deal with it for him.
Yep.
Because he's been dealing with it for like, what would that be, 30, 40 years?
And you've got okay, so and you've got nine siblings. So yeah, I was going to ask, like, when you mentioned your mom was your first trigger, like, was there always kind of quiet in the background, and then she would make a sound? But it seems I would imagine that your house usually has a certain amount of background noise with
Hmm.
all the commotion, right? And but you're still able to pick out things that just kind of drive you crazy.
Yeah, and that was the weird thing for me at first because like even around the dinner table, I wouldn't hear anybody eating except for my mom at first.
Mm,
Like, if I was sitting close enough where like the sound would actually carry, like that would be the only thing that I would actually notice. Like other people eating, I wouldn't really notice. It was just her at first, which was weird.
was your relationship with your mom fine at that point?
Yeah.
It wasn't. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like I mean, it was obvious I was a teen and she was the mom, so like occasionally we would have like arguments, but like our relationship was really good, so it didn't really have anything to do with
Hmm.
that. Which is kind
Okay.
of weird because I know for like I've heard a lot of stories where like their first trigger is someone who like they had a bad relationship with, and it kind of
Correct.
created
Right.
bad associations.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. Okay, and then yeah, and then tell me. So other family situations. So you said family devotion. I don't know the terminology, but and that's I'm assuming like a religious thing. So I always
Yeah,
associate super quiet in the background, right? Is
yeah,
that is that kind
yeah.
of what it
And
is?
then
Okay.
you have one person talking,
Yeah,
and if they're doing that smacky thing every time they talk, like
yeah,
that gets bad because I'm like trying to concentrate and involve myself. And then you have that, and just every time that happens, it's like a punch in the face. And so
yeah.
you can't get involved because like you have to protect yourself against that.
And that's happening at home, right? Around that is that around the or is that at church?
Both actually. I started wearing earbuds in church too.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like
Churches,
during the
yeah. I mean,
sermon.
it's churches are, yeah, as bad or worse than libraries for that reason. But I guess the acoustics can be interesting, good and bad. You always have kind of like an echoey background, but then any
Hmm.
sound can kind of like radiate.
Yeah, yeah.
Did it affect how you were kind of whether you were attending church or not, or just you just kind of dealt with it the same way you deal it with it everywhere?
I just kind of dealt with it because like I guess the way I normally approached it was like okay, I'm gonna have to be in this situation. What am
Yep.
I gonna do about it? I always try to avoid like the running away from the situation. I don't know why. It probably has to do with like an ego problem,
Hmm.
but um, I always try to like push through as much as I can.
Yep.
There were a few times where like I had to like, just like completely check out of church.
Yeah.
Like I just basically, physically I was there, but like mentally I was not there.
And do you notice any just thought of asking because you mentioned earlier that sometimes when you're tired you can't pay attention as much at
Hmm.
in lectures. Do you notice like I don't know, getting sleep the night before or fatigue affecting? Because I know
Oh yeah.
stress definitely affects misophonia. That's a universal. I'm
Oh
just
yeah.
curious if you've noticed other and other kind of parallel situation conditions.
Yeah, I think sleep is a big part of it because like the more sleep I've had, the more emotionally stable and the more like full of energy I am, and so I have more energy to like fight against it, like
Right.
fight against the reaction. Obviously stress. I actually found that one out like a few months ago from my counselor. I guess that's really it. Now that I think about it, I
Hmm,
feel like there's
hmm.
something else. I can't remember it. If I
Oh,
do, I'll let you know.
oh
But
yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, I'm curious about we talked about how school can be a problem. So I'm curious about homeschooling and how that situation was because I'm sure there's some people who are thinking about like, damn, I wish if I wish if I just didn't have to go to this, room full of
yeah,
30, 40 kids, if I could just be in a safe space and just these days you can learn anything like a lot of stuff online or
yeah.
through homeschool resources. How was that set up? Was that with all you and all your siblings, or was it neighbors?
It was just me and my siblings.
Hmm.
Oftentimes like homeschools they'll have like homeschool groups and you'll like go to class once a week and like talk about what you learn and stuff. But like for us, we kind of lived out in the middle of nowhere, and so it was
Hmm.
just us.
And
And
who was the
so
teacher? Was it? Did you bring a teacher in, or your
no,
parents were teaching?
it was just my mom, and
Nice.
then a little bit of my dad. And so we were all actually in different grades, and so she would have like tutoring sessions with us every day. We'd go over the material we were supposed to learn, and then we'd go do our homework. We'd have like class discussion every week for like history and stuff like that. Because we'd like read the material on our own and then discuss it in class.
Yeah.
And so fortunately, like when I was doing my homework and all that stuff, most of the time I could be in my room with my music, which is really nice. But like the class discussions, like with my mom, it's my mom and she talks a certain way. And for a while, like I really did not do well because I couldn't handle it. But eventually, I started wearing the earbuds and my mom knew what was going on. And so we kind of worked together on that. And I think homeschooling, like for people with misophonia, I think homeschooling is like, can kind of be a double-edged sword because in a
Hmm.
way, yeah, you're around people, they can accommodate you. You aren't around all these hundreds of strangers. You can go to your room whenever you want. It's really like accommodating and flexible. But on the other hand, actually two things. If your family isn't understanding or if they're not accommodating, that can be like
That's
a
gonna be hell.
nightmare.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And also, while it does give you a really safe space, you don't get the real world experience that people like going to public school or private school would like, going out in like, I guess I could say the real world for me, it was a
Yeah.
huge shock, including the misophonia, because like suddenly there's all these people who I can't just say like, hey, that noise is bothering me. Please stop. Because they're gonna think I don't know what they're gonna think, but it's not gonna be good. You
Yeah.
know.
And there could be some positives where, though you might be more likely to find people because they're different who have misophonia, or you're
Hmm.
in larger buildings, so you know, there's
Yeah.
always an empty room somewhere.
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly. There's positives and negatives to both, I think.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Great. Okay, cool. And so, yeah, you're homeschooled with your siblings, all different grades. Did you um did you help them? How and if and how have you helped them with their misophonia as they're still in school? I'm assuming they're younger.
Oh. Yeah. Yeah. So my little brother currently is the only one I know of, except for my dad and me, who has misophonia right now. And yeah, I've really tried to help him. I kind of showed him the ropes when he was figuring it out. I bought him some earbuds. Um, he and I live in the same room together. It's just us two, and so like,
Ah.
we're very accommodating of each other. Like it's basically a safe space. We never eat in the room unless the other person's gone. We're always respectful of noises and everything. Like we can just like rant whenever we need to. So
Mm-hmm.
I guess I kind of just like gave him a space where, he could just like not worry about it. And he did the same for me.
That's
And,
cool.
we talked about like, we complained to each other. We talked about like ways to deal with different situations. Um, it was just kind of like this really, really great understanding
Well,
between
yeah.
us.
No, it's great. He's very fortunate to have somebody to kind of like lead the way. So when you finally went off to college, okay, let's back up a bit. So I guess you said you were taking some dual enrollment courses, I guess, in high
Yeah.
school. Is that how is that kind of like to kind of prep you to go to college, or
It's actually classes at a college, but like you take them in high school, so they give you high school credits and college credits. But it's like an
yeah,
actual like legit college class. So I
yeah.
went to University of Memphis, and I took classes there. My last year of high school.
So when you went there, there must have been some. Were there any like shocking moments, like in terms of
Um,
misophonia, that you remember?
the first time somebody brought food into class,
You were like, what
that
the?
was yeah, because I hadn't been wearing earbuds in class because like it hadn't been a big deal. These were small classes.
Yeah.
And then suddenly somebody's like eating behind me, and like I freaked out. I was like, oh no, what is gonna happen? Like I can't handle this. You
Did you
know?
have you always bottled it up? It seems like when you were at home, it was a lot of glaring, which we're all familiar with the glare.
Oh yes.
Um, that's one of our yeah. And so, did you ever like? raise your voice and yell, whether at home or to
I
this
mean,
freak who is sitting behind you?
yeah, normally I was a bottler upper. I
Yeah,
would
yeah.
just stuff it inside. I would push
We're
it
good
down.
at
I would
that.
suppress it. Yeah. Actually made a lot of problems for me recently. But there were a few times when, I would be talking about it, and so I'd already have kind of the gate open a little bit. I would be letting a little bit in, a little bit out, and then somebody would do something, I would just like explode verbally for a few seconds.
So
Um,
you were talking about misophonia with somebody.
Normally, yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah,
then gotcha, and
because like it'd already
then
be on my mind. I'd already be like a little bit,
mm,
feeling a little bit comfortable because I had to.
yeah,
And there were like once or twice where I did lash out physically. There's one time when one of my older brothers, he made a trigger noise as a joke because he thought it was funny,
yeah,
and I punched him in the stomach.
mm,
Obviously.
yeah, yeah. Of course, yeah.
I mean, it's the obvious solution.
That's how
Uh,
that's. But anyone listening to the podcast, that's how we recommend dealing with misophonia issues. Punch the person in the stomach.
Foolproof
We were
method.
not responsible for legal fees. Got it. Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, obviously we don't want to be hitting anybody, but it's at least it was a family member, and
Yeah, yeah. Fortunately, have not
between brothers.
lashed out. Yeah.
Yeah, that's. I think
Like, no.
most of us obviously have those thoughts, but it's
Oh, yes.
somehow we keep it all in.
I think
Um,
it's I think it's kind of like we know that like we have to keep it in, like there's not another option. And so, it's like dealing with extreme pain. Like you really
mhm.
don't want to and you feel like you can't, but you have to. And so you end up dealing with it somehow. And I think it's kind of the same way. 'Cause like I know I've had times where if I was not like fully in control of myself, you know, it would have been very, very bad. And we're talking about like mass violence on my part, like I was having all those images in my head and like I didn't think I could deal with it, but somehow, you know, I guess I guess it's kind of like, in that moment you just get like superhuman strength or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah. And you were saying has it been causing problems, the bottling up causing problems recently with anybody in your life?
Well, it was mainly my own personal problems that obviously, went to my friends and my relationships, but like first year of college, you know, I've been comfortable at home. I've been used to everything. In the first year of college, I get thrown into this new universe
Mm, mm.
and everything's thrown off. And so I'm having to figure myself out. And, eventually one evening I just kind of like broke down because I realized that like I'd been faking everything my entire life because I'd had to suppress everything. And so, I kind of had to like fake the social interactions and everything because I was always suppressing the
Gotcha.
reactions. And that became like permanent basically. I was just kind of you know faking everything, and obviously that's pretty devastating to realize. So I started to go to counseling. We started to unpack all sorts of problems, a lot of them initially related to misophonia. And for a while, like I didn't even like know who I was because I'd been suppressing things for so long that I didn't like suppressing myself.
So did you feel kind of
So
like distant from some of your relationships because you were just thinking about misophonia a lot and you felt like you weren't
yeah,
like totally connected? Yeah. Hmm.
yeah, especially like with my family, because like all my relationships with my family are kind of like coexisting with misophonia. Like that's part of it. And so when I'm dealing with it, that's all it is. And so I don't really have a close emotional connection with most of my family. With a lot of my friends, it was like when I was around them, I would just, be pretending to be happy because I couldn't let the noises bother me. And
Gotcha.
so while I do have like good friends, it wasn't like how friendships are supposed to be, I guess.
And you probably, perhaps like you would take off, um, uh, after eating for 5 minutes at meals, maybe shut down conversations
Hmm.
or social times with friends just to minimize the potential of a
Yeah.
trigger, I would imagine, right?
Yeah. And like, if I never went to movies. I couldn't
Yeah,
because, the popcorn and the snacks. And like, so whenever my friends were going to a movie, I couldn't come. I just couldn't, playing video games. Like, if there were snacks playing a video game, I'd have to like go to the restroom for a few minutes, or
Mm-hmm.
like just like pretend to borrow the snacks and then just like hide them for a little bit so that nobody would be eating, just so I could get like a moment of peace. It's like always on my mind, especially back then.
Yeah. And did you did obviously you came from a religious family. Did religion help at all? Like have faith stuff, or was that completely separate?
Well, I wouldn't say it's like completely separate, but like,
Yeah.
it didn't tangibly help that much.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if I was struggling with like guilt because of my feelings, like obviously it helped then.
Yeah.
But, you know, for a while, like it was kind of separated. But I think the main way it helps is, like I kind of
Patience,
have,
perhaps. Yeah.
well, some of that, yeah, and more of like, you know, I don't have to feel guilty for feeling this way because like I've been forgiven and all that,
Mm-hmm.
and I have like some sort of like something to fall back on that like won't judge me.
Yeah.
It's kind of like
Well,
my own little safe space, I guess.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, and so I guess so. You're at college right now as we
Yeah.
speak. And so holidays are coming up. I'm not sure when this might actually air after the holidays. We've just had so many interviews that I don't want to say that these are going to be tips for the upcoming holidays. Maybe not 2019, but at least some holiday.
Yeah.
How are you preparing for that? I mean, it sounds like for you, it's like you're going to go home and people will be conscious, and you even
Yeah.
have sufferers at home. So it's not it's not as bad as some people who are going to be heading back, and it's just going to be like dreading it.
Yeah.
Um, are there any? Are you going to be bringing in other family members? Like, is it a big thing that you will still have to deal with extended family
I
and
assume I assume my two oldest brothers are, or at least one of them is going to be coming back. They've married and moved out, so they don't know much about the Mississippi thing. So
gotcha. Okay.
they're always it's a lot harder to deal with that because they don't understand and they don't know as much. Like they know, but like they don't really fully understand. Um,
Do they tease it, or no? They just
they just don't notice.
okay. Yeah.
Like they'll be eating noisily and they don't even think about it. It's not like they're purposefully annoying me, which is nice, but
Yeah.
they're
That's a
not.
step up from a lot of people. So
Yes, I am very blessed with
count your
that.
blessings. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And if we do have friends over, that's always a problem because like I'm not gonna sit there and like tell my parents' friends, hey, can you stop eating? That's annoying me. Like I'm not gonna do that. So that is a lot harder to deal with. If there's a big Thanksgiving get together or something like that, I'll have to make sure I have my earbuds and I make sure that I know where I can go if I need a quiet place and all that sort of stuff. But for the most part, it is nice like going back to my family and being able to just like be alone and not have to worry about that sort of thing.
Yeah. Cool. And then you'll be back at school. So you got a couple more years left in your program. I'm curious, what do you have you thought about what you want to do after you graduate? And have you looked at like some jobs are obviously better for misophonia than others.
Yeah, yeah,
And sometimes just need to like talk to people in certain industries to figure out like what kind of offices do you have? Like
hmm,
have you looked at, do you know exactly what you want to do, or have you kind of I'm sure misophonia has kind of played into your thinking. I'm just
oh
curious
yeah, oh yeah.
how you
And
thought.
honestly, I think a lot of people may be surprised by this answer, but I think I want to work in an office environment. And the reason I say people be surprised is like, oh, offices, there's tons of people eating and everything, but the thing with offices is you can wear earbuds constantly
Mm-hmm.
and you have your own little cubicle or your own little office, and that can kind of turn into your safe space. And so you can, when you're there, you don't have to worry about the noises or the visual triggers or anything. And so when you need to go talk to someone, you can kind of like be rested and prepared. And I had an internship last summer where that was the case. And actually, despite everybody, eating and snacking and all that sort of stuff, I didn't have very many problems at all because I could wear my earbuds and be in my little corner of the room. And so, I think that is actually something that I'd lean toward. It's kind of like the office type work.
Was it an open office environment where you were at?
Yes.
Or
Yeah, it
okay,
was like, the little cubicle separators and all that sort of stuff.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
Well, that's great. Yeah, I mean, I work in tech, and a lot of tech companies, yeah, they're very open office, but a lot of them will just buy headphones for people, and not necessarily because of misophonia, but just because programmers who want to just be focused. And so I tell
yeah.
everybody, let's jump on that bandwagon. Just use whatever arguments it takes to get
Oh yeah.
accommodations like that.
Oh yeah.
Is great.
I've even had to get letters. I had to get a letter from a psychiatrist back in Memphis to like, get a single room and stuff like that. And like, there was one point last semester where I was taking an exam and I was wearing my earbuds, I had white noise all the way up because like exams obviously dead quiet, so many trigger noises. And
Yeah.
so I had my earbuds in, and the TA was like, "Hey, take your earbuds out." And I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I have to wear them because I have this condition. I have a letter." And I showed them the letter, and they were like, "Okay, cool. That's okay." And
Mhm.
that was like really nice because honestly, if I had to take an exam without the earbuds, I would fail it.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad that knock on wood, it didn't bother me enough to. I was able to escape college with pretty good grades before it completely. I don't know if I'd be able to do that now. So that's great that you got that accommodation from your psychiatrist.
Yeah. Wait, so has it like gotten worse for you as you've gotten older?
I think there have been more triggers. I think so. But yeah, for me it was family, but that's all kind of all I knew when I was growing up. Kind of like you, I
Yeah.
guess, right? And then
Yeah.
when I went to college, I feel like I don't know I don't know any crazy memories. Obviously, I mean, we did exams in giant gyms, and
Mm-hmm.
I made it out. And the exams were hard, but that wasn't because of the misophonia. It was just a hard, super hard
Yeah.
program. So
Yeah.
made it out. I know that I would do internships and co-op, is kind of what they call it in Canada, co-op programs where I'd work for 4 months at a time. And I
Yeah.
know that, and it was cubicles like what you had, but I just remember I could not stand going out to lunches with my coworkers.
Hmm.
Um,
Yes. Yeah.
I thought it was just because they're so freaking boring, but it might have been more than that. And but anyway, but it's been more, yeah, I guess when I found out about Miss Funny was like 2009 or so, and by that point I knew I had it, and going back to like family, growing up with family. So um
Yeah.
but it definitely spread to like basically any environment, and including work, including social environments.
Hmm.
So obviously, like most people, it's expanded beyond family, but in terms of like trigger sounds, it's kind of the same for me. Like
Okay.
throat, mouth, whatnot, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
But talking about it, talking like realizing it has a name has helped a lot of people.
Yes, that's
Um,
huge.
it has helped because it's another way of like knowing that like time boxing. You know that there's an end time. That sounds kind of ominous, but
Yeah.
knowing that it has a name too just kind of makes you realize, okay, well, I can go and talk about it with somebody at some point, and then
Exactly.
talking
Yeah.
about it with you, and I'm sure hopefully you talking about it with me, kind of like reduces the triggers.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. That
And
was a long answer to your simple question, but I'm hoping to get some of your dad's mojo there, where it kind of goes away over time. I don't want to lose my hearing, but
Yeah,
that
I don't
sounds like
think
a
it'd be worth
decent
it for me.
situation. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think he like tried to, so I have no clue what he did. But if I can find out his secret, like I will share that with the world.
That
You
might be he
know?
might be a rich man if we can tap into that. So cool. Well, I there's a lot of people who've not talked about this with anybody. Is there anything that we haven't already covered that you'd like to kind of like advice or whatever, or tips that you'd like to give people who are listening?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like having someone who understands is huge. So if you don't, like, I don't know if it would be a best friend or like, a significant other, or if you have a good relationship with your parents, it could be them, but like somebody needs to know. It's one of those things where like if you tell someone, it really helps out because then you can go to them and they understand. you'll never be able to like fully avoid triggers. Like that's just not realistic. So you have to find coping mechanisms. I think earbuds are probably the best way. I probably buy too many, but I buy like those wireless earbuds, kind of like AirPods. I try to find ones that have like an audio transparency feature or like a sound let through feature. So I turn that
Mm,
on and I turn white noise on so you can hear people, but the white noise covers most of the triggers, and that was
okay.
honestly a game changer for me. Um,
Yeah, I'll have to look at that. I usually buy them in all form factors. So I got every type of size and
yeah,
amount of blocking. But I haven't tried the pass-through stuff.
it
But
actually
that's
like for most situations it works pretty well because you can hear people talking, but most of the trigger noises are kind of at a lower level, lower frequency, and
yeah.
so the white noise can mask those, and it works really well.
Yeah,
Um,
so you're not right. So I usually stick those earbuds in, put on music, and that just kind of a reduces outside noise and covers it with sound. But
yeah,
a
yeah,
pass through would kind of mix the outside noise back in and just put the
exactly,
white
yeah.
noise on top of it. Okay. Hmm.
And you could use all sorts of combinations of like music, white noise, pass through, noise
Yeah.
cancellation. Like, if you get good earbuds, they'll have all those features. And so,
Hmm.
depending on the situation, like if you're in an exam, noise cancellation and white noise will be the best thing in the world. But like you're having a conversation with someone, pass through and white noise. That way you can still hear them, but you're
Yeah.
not being bothered by the trigger noises and all that.
Yeah, there's okay. There's a new I have a Pixel, so there's a new Google Buds coming out soon, so I'll
Yeah.
see if they have that. Well, thanks so much, Tim. I know, like I said, a lot of people have been bottling this up, and they're going to benefit from hearing your experience, which is pretty unique compared to
Really?
what in terms of your family background,
Yeah, that is
your
true.
schooling, and so that's really interesting. Yeah, I got a lot of I learned a lot here from you too in terms of tips and whatnot. So, yeah, thank you again, and good luck.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me here. Like, this is honestly a great opportunity. I really, really love what you're doing here. Like, I think this is something that, we all need. And so I'm glad that I could just be like a part of it.
Well, thank you, Tim. I had a great time during that chat, and I hope everyone listening enjoyed it as well. You can drop me a line anytime with feedback at hello@misophoniapodcast.com. Still have a lot of stickers I'm happy to send out. The music is by Moby. And until next week, wishing you peace and quiet.